Hi everyone, it's Veronica, and in this tutorial I wanted to show you how to create a freeform drag and drop question. So in Storyline you have the ability to create different kinds of quiz questions. You can create, if we go here, you can create graded, traditional questions like multiple choice or true false fill in the blank, and then you can also create freeform questions which basically do not use a form for you to construct them, so they require a little bit more, but the results can be really great. So I'll show you how to create a drag and drop one today. So there are two ways in which you can create a freeform drag and drop question. The first way is the way that I just did it. You go to insert a new slide and then you select quizzing from the side menu, and then at the top you select freeform from these options, and drag drop is the first option there, so you can go ahead and insert that. There is another way, however, and it's the way that I'm going to do it. So you would use this way if you had just a blank slide and you were going to start creating your question on a blank slide. However, I already have a slide here that I would like to change into a freeform drag and drop question. So the way to do this, or the second way to create a freeform drag and drop, is to convert this slide to freeform. So there's a option here, a button here under the Insert tab that says Convert to Freeform. So if I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and that's going to bring up the same screen that we had before, and it's going to give me the options of what kind of freeform I want to create. So I'm going to go ahead and select Drag and Drop. Now, a couple of things happen when you do that. First of all, by default, Storyline will take you to the form view of the question, but I'm not quite ready to do that yet, so I'm going to go back to the slide view there. And two other things will happen. Because this is now a quiz question that can be tracked by a results slide and therefore by an LMS, it will automatically, Storyline will automatically create a correct and an incorrect layer for the feedback, and also it will automatically create a trigger to submit the interaction drag and drop when the user clicks the submit button. And if you check on the properties of your slide there, you will see that rather than a preview and next buttons, which this slide did have before, it's now changed to be a submit button that's part of the player. So now that I have the basic setup, what I'd like to do is, I have this is a leadership course that I built a very long time ago. So what I want to do is I'm going to have some activities that typically a manager would do or typically a leader would do, and I've got a leader here and a manager here. These are groups of objects, so you can see here that it's created by a picture and a caption. So there's my leader and there's my manager, and I want to have some activities here that I can drag and drop onto either the leader or the manager accordingly. So I have one only at the moment, which is just manager activity 1. And I'm just going to keep them like that to make it easy and clear for this tutorial. So basically I'm going to add a few more. I'm going to have, say, 6 activities for managers and 6 for leaders. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So here I've got all of my activities I've created. I've got 6 activities for manager and 6 for leader. And the other thing I did was, in my timeline, I made sure that I labeled each of these text boxes descriptively so that later I know exactly which activity I am dealing with when I'm choosing my options for the question. So what basically I want the user to do is to drag these different boxes onto the leader or the manager. So what we can do now in order for that to work is go to the form view, and we have on the left we have drag items, so the items that we can drag onto a drop target here on the right. So I'm going to select all my drag items. So I've got manager activity 1, and I'll go ahead and select all of those. So here I've done all of the manager activities and all of the leader activities, and on the right I'm going to select the correct drop target. So the manager activities will all need to be dropped on the manager group there. So I'll go ahead and do all of that. There we go. So all the manager activities get dropped on the manager group and the leader activities get dropped on the leader group. So this is essentially functioning drag and drop activity now. So we can go and preview this slide. Here we go, and I'm going to drop my activities here. Now that doesn't look very good, and we'll fix that up in a minute, but I can drop that. If I try to drop a manager on here, it's still going to let me do it. So I might have incorrect ones, and I will only know when I submit. And obviously that was incorrect. So let's go and make some changes to make this work just a little bit better, or rather in the way that I actually want it to work. So back in my slide, I'm going to go back to form view, and this is what's really, really cool about these drag and drop freeform questions, is that you have lots of options that you can play with. So for one thing, I'd like to make the number of attempts unlimited. So I'm going to say unlimited there, and you'll see that automatically there's another layer created, the try again layer, because obviously if they have more than one attempt and they are incorrect, they will get a try again layer with feedback on it. The other things that you can tinker with up here are the scoring and shuffling of the options. So if you turn on shuffle answers, the options will appear in a different order each time. And this one is very important. So the drag and drop options. So I just wanted to zoom in on this a little bit. So there's a few options here that will really customize your interaction. First of all, for the drag item options, you can choose to click this option, return item to start point if dropped outside either any drop target or a correct drop target. So you may have seen drag and drop interactions where if you try and drag something onto an incorrect target, it won't let you do it. It'll bounce back to its original position. So that would be when this is selected, a correct drop target. So you can only drop it correctly or not at all. And in other cases, you might have just bounce it back to its starting point if it's dropped outside any of the drop targets, whether correct or incorrect. We have this option here to reveal each item one at a time. So in our case, at the moment, we have all the draggable items all visible on the screen, but we are going to play with this option just a little bit in a second. And then we have the drop target options. So we have different ways in which we can snap the item to the drop target. Now, you could choose tile or stack random or stack offset, snap to center, or free. I sometimes like free because when I'm doing a drag and drop interaction, I feel like I want to be able to place the object wherever I like rather than it snapping. So that's the way that I like it, but it really depends on the kind of interaction that you're building and your purpose, of course. And this one here is pretty interesting too. We're not going to use it in our particular case, but you might have a drag and drop activity where only there's one drag item to one drop target. And in that case, you probably want to tick the option allow only one item in each drop target so that users aren't able to drop multiple items on a single drop target. But we're not going to tick that one here. And delay item drop states until interaction is submitted is something that we'll look at in a minute, but essentially this means when the interaction is submitted, in this case because it's ticked, if there were any drop states on the objects, then they will only be visible after we submit the interaction, and I'll show you about that in just a second. So before pressing OK, I've just changed this one up here to return item to start point if dropped outside a correct drop target, and I'll show you how that works. So here's my preview again, and if I try to drop this manager activity onto the leader, it's just going to bounce back. It's not going to let me. So I want it to work so that we can only let them drop it on the correct one. In this case, of course, you do whatever you need to do for your particular interaction. Now, going back to my slide, I don't really like the way that this looks here. The items aren't really aligned and it just looks a bit plainish. So I've got this little post-it note that I prepared earlier, and what I want to do is I actually want to have these text boxes are probably going to be a little bit longer in terms of amount of text. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to actually have the text appear on the text box. So I want to put my text box on top of my post-it note. So the way to do that is to basically I'm just going to make 12 copies of the post-it note. So I've created all my post-it notes with the text right on top. Of course, this looks very messy and we couldn't use it like this. But basically what I've done and what I wanted to show you is that I've now made a group of each of the post-it notes with its text box. So I've done it for all of these, and I can show you with this one here. I've got the post-it note and then I've got the text box, so I can select both by hitting the Control key, and then Control G changes that into a group. Now what will happen is automatically, if you go to Form View, your interaction will still work perfectly fine, except that the drag items are now called Group 1 and Group 12 and 7 and so on. So they are now all called groups. And what I'd like to do, because I'm tidy and I like to know what I'm working with, I would then probably go and rename each of these groups. So for all my drag items, I have a naming convention that I use, that is capital letters drag and then a descriptive word or phrase for that item. So in this case I would say drag, and then I'd just say manager activity 1 and so on. I would rename all of them like this. And generally speaking, with my drop targets, which are these groups down here, I would also rename them with the word in capital letters drop at the beginning. And if I hadn't built this question already, when I go into Form View and I select all of my drag and drop options, it's very clear to me which ones are the drag elements and which ones are the drop targets and where each element has to go. So that makes it really easy to work like that. Now there's one thing I want to do here, and of course I can't have the activity looking like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of these groups and I'm going to basically stack them on top of each other. So I'm just going to go to my Align tools and say middle and then center. And now that I've got them there, I can just move them, let's say, right there. But obviously, that's not so good either. So there's one more thing that I want to change. I'll go back to Form View, and in my drag and drop options, remember this one here that said reveal drag items one at a time. I want to click this one now. And even though they are sitting on top of each other and you can only see one at a time, this is a good one to check there. And if you want to customize it even more, you can click this little button there and you can change the order in which the different drag items appear. So you can still customize it a lot more. So let's just have a look at how this is working now. And here we go. So I've got my first option there. I'm going to drag it. Manager, I'm going to drag it. Leader, I'm going to drag it. And so on. So that works perfectly well. I have one final tip for you. So back in my slide, I actually have on this post-it note, so if I click in again and select that note, you'll see down here that I've got a state for this one. This line is just a little bit over the top of that, but this basically green color note is a drop correct state, and I've added that. It's one of the built-in states that comes with Storyline, so I added this drop correct state. So all I'm going to do now is go back to my drag and drop options, and this one here that says delay item drop states, so that drop correct state is a drop state until interaction is submitted. I'm going to untick that, and let's have a look and see what happens when I do that. So here we go. I'm going to drop that onto there, and there you go. That's changed to green because I'm telling it to show the correct state, the drop correct state, when the learner drops it correctly. If I try and drop this one onto the leader, it's not going to do it. It's just going to stay yellow. But if I drop it correctly, it'll turn green. So there you have it. If you'd like to see more samples or tutorials, you can visit my websites. I've got a blog and a website. And I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope it was useful. Thank you. Bye.